Hello, algebra students. Mr. Lawrence here, and this video is for the people that are coded yellow or red. All right, if you're coded yellow or red, you should be watching this video. If you're coded green, it's okay to be watching it, but you're not held responsible for it. But it could be benefit if you had nothing to do during, Pride time or something like that, and just take your learning a little bit deeper. Anyway, so I'm going to start this video with the triangle inequality theorem. By the way, you should be taking notes on this and doing things along with me in the video. All right, the triangle inequality theorem. We've talked about this yesterday, I believe, in class. If you were not in class, then you definitely want to take some serious notes on it. Even if you were, it might be a good idea to take notes again, okay, in case you weren't paying attention or in case it didn't sink in. So, it said the sum of the lengths of any two sides of a triangle is greater than the lengths of the third side. The length of the third side, excuse me. The sum means addition, right? Of any two sides. So if I take any two sides of a triangle and I add them together, that sum has to be greater than the third side, the length of the third side. Now, I know a lot of you look at this and you go, huh, what does it mean? Well, there's nothing in here you don't understand. You know that sum is addition, okay? You got to add two sides lengths of the triangle together, and that is going to be greater than the length of the third side. So I'm going to write an inequality based on this triangle ABC. I know that if I add A and B together, that must be greater than C. How do I know that? I just used the triangle inequality theorem right there. Right now, I want you to write go ahead and pause the video, write the other two inequalities that you can get from this triangle. All right, hopefully you've done that. If you haven't, pause the video and write the other two inequalities. Now, here's a hint. All of them should be addition problems. So I went A plus B. That had to be greater than C. Well, what if I do A plus C? That's got to be greater than B. You can't change it. You can't say, well, that's got to be less than B. No, the triangle inequality theorem states that if you add up any two sides, like A and C, the sum will be greater than the third side, namely B. All right, hopefully you can get the third one now. Again, if you haven't gotten the third one, pause the video and get it, and then unpause it so you can see the solution. All right, so this time I'm going to add B plus C, and that would be greater than A. Right, I add two of the sides. Now, I wouldn't waste my time doing this one too. Some of you might be going, oh, well, there's more inequalities. Ooh, sorry, that's a D. That shouldn't be a D there. My mistake. Because there is no side D. It's a triangle. There's only three sides. These two are equivalent statements, and therefore I don't need to put both of them on there. B plus C and C plus B are the same according to the commutative property of addition, right? Commutative property, the order can change. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this, and there's my three inequalities. Now, when I go to apply this to a problem, one of these inequalities will probably be unnecessary, but we'll talk about that in a minute. All right, so let's see this problem here. Kayla lives 4 miles from Jacob. Jacob lives 7 miles from Nick. How far does Kayla live from Nick? Now, we don't want to assume, many of you were assuming the first time we put a problem up like this, you were assuming that they all lived in a line, like maybe Kayla was here, and then Jacob was there, and then Nick was there. Something like that. That does not have to be the case. That could be the case, but we're not limited to that. So what we're going to do is we're going to assume that they are not in a line. And we are going to put Kayla here, and then Jacob here, and we know that the distance from their two homes is 4 miles. Okay? Now, where we put Nick can vary. Nick has to live 7 miles from Jacob. That could be 7 miles this way. It could be 7 miles in this direction. It could be 7 miles in that direction. It could be 7 miles in this direction or that direction. See, there's infinite possibilities there. for this problem, we're going to assume that's not in a straight line. And we're just going to turn it into a triangle. We're going to put Nick here. And we know that Jacob lives 7 miles from Nick. Now you might say, your triangle doesn't look right because the length that's 4 is looks longer than the length that's 7 miles. And that's true, but it's just a rough sketch. I mean, if you want to draw it more accurately, you can, but it's impossible to know what type of triangle to draw based on the information. So if you want to do it like that, so it looks a little bit better, where at least the black one is longer than the red one, that's fine. Okay, the question is, we've got to find out how far Kayla is from Nick. Well, let me see here. Okay, there's my triangle, and I'm going to put a variable there because I don't know that distance. Now, I would like you to pause the video and write me 3 inequalities just like we did with A, B, and C. Okay, unpause the video when you're ready to see the 3 inequalities. Okay, the first inequality is going to be x plus 7 is greater than 4. The second inequality is going to be x plus 4 is greater than 7. And the third inequality is going to be 4 plus 7, and that's going to be greater than x. Now remember, I mentioned that one of the inequalities might not be useful. Can you tell which one it is? The one that's not useful is this first one, because 7 is automatically larger than 4, regardless of what x is. Now, I don't know if you realize this, but x can't be 0 because you can't have the length of a triangle be 0. You can't have the length of any polygon be 0. And x cannot be a negative number. Even if you solve this, oops, I'm sorry, what am I doing there? I should be subtracting 7. It's going to tell you that x is greater than negative 3. Well, we know that because it has to be greater than 0, so this one is not useful. It's kind of trivial, so we're going to get rid of it. It's not going to tell us anything pertinent. Okay, now these other 2 inequalities are very important. They're going to give us the boundaries on the minimum number of miles Nick and Kayla could be apart from each other, and the maximum number of miles. So I'm going to solve each one for x. So on this one, I've got to subtract 4 from both sides. And I'm going to get x is greater than 7. Okay, and yeah, it's a compound inequality. This one, I'm going to add those 2 and get 11, and 11 is going to be greater than x. Now, I don't like the way this is worded. It's true, 11 is greater than x, but I'd much rather see it as x is less than 11. And if I look at this compound inequality here, this one right here, I see that x has to be greater than 7. So I could say the distance from Kayla's home to Nick's home is more than 7 miles. How do I know that? Well, I labeled the third side, x, Kayla to Nick, as x miles. And here I know that x has to be greater than 7. But I'm not done, because there's another boundary here. And less than 11 miles. It could be 10 and 9/10 miles, it could be 7 1/4 miles, it could be 8 miles, we just don't know. But we know the range that it can fall in. Now, since it's a story problem, we want to give an answer like this, okay? All right, now, here's another problem. It says the lengths of 2 sides of a triangle are 115 centimeters, 203 centimeters. What are the possible lengths for the third side? I want you to go ahead and solve this one all on your own, okay? If you're working with a partner, that's fine. If you're working individually, that's fine. You should be doing this in your notebook. Go ahead and try it. Unpause the video when you're ready to see my solution. Okay, here comes my solution. Again, if you haven't tried it on your own, pause the video and try it. First thing I'm going to do is draw a triangle. And again, it doesn't matter what type of triangle. I'm going to label this 115 centimeters. I'm going to label this 203 centimeters. And this is going to be unknown. All right, so it's time to write my three inequalities. Let me see here. I'm going to go 115 plus 203 is going to be greater than x. The next inequality is going to be 115 plus x is greater than 203. And the third one is going to be x plus 203 is greater than 115. Well, that's the trivial one because 203 is automatically larger than 115, so I'm going to ignore that one. All right, so I'm going to solve each of these. If I add these together, I'm going to get 318 is greater than x. Here I have to subtract 115. Well, let me see here. If I had to do 200 minus 115, that would be 85. So if I have to do 203 minus 115, there's 3 more there. So I must have 3 more in my answer. The answer would be 88. So x is going to be greater than 88. All right, so here's my compound inequality. And then I would write a sentence. And I would say the length of the third side of the triangle is greater than 88 centimeters. I'm sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Sorry about that. Hopefully you got a chance to pause, put down your volume. The length of the third side of the triangle has to be greater than 88 centimeters and less than 318 centimeters, but it could be anything in between. I can't determine it based on any information. All right, let's move over to another type of problem here. And this type says Maddie scored 75%, 82%, 77% on 3 recent tests. All tests were out of the same number of points. She has 1 more test to take, and we're going to go ahead and assume that this 4th test is out of the same number of points as well. Her mom told her she would buy Maddie a new phone if her average on the test was between 80 and 87%. What are the possible scores Maddie can get on the 4th and final test so that she can get her new phone? You know, before you do a problem like this, you have to stop and ask yourself, how do I get an average? Well, to get an average, don't you add all the numbers and then you divide it by how many numbers there are? Oops, not spelling that right. That says homma. Don't want homma. How many numbers there are? Okay, so we're going to set this up. So let me go back to here. By the way, I got another sneeze coming on. Watch your volume. Ooh, sorry about that. All right, so I know that Maddie scored 75, 82, and 77. I'm going to have to divide that sum. The only problem is she's taking a 4th test. I don't know her score on the 4th test. Neither does she. She hasn't taken it yet. The score on that 4th test is unknown. That's a good thing in algebra. You know, a lot of times kids think they're supposed to know the answer. Well, in algebra, you don't know the answer. So you put a variable in its place. I don't know how many points she's going to score. So I'm going to put a variable there. Now I have to divide by the number of tests she took. Well, when it's all said and done, she'll have taken 1, 2, 3, 4 tests. Now, what's the smallest percentage Maddie can have in order to get her phone? Well, that would be an 80%. So I'm going to make 80 a lower boundary. Her average has to be at least 80. That's what this says right here, 80 or more. But for some reason, her mom put another boundary on and said, can't be higher than an 87. Very unusual thing by Mom. You'd think she'd be happy that, if she got a 93 or something, I don't know, maybe she's going to buy her something better. I don't know. The story doesn't tell us. But this percentage has to be no more or less than or equal to 87. Okay, so now I'm going to solve this compound inequality. By the way, you could have written two inequalities. 80 is less than or equal to this, and this is less than or equal to 87. I like to do it as one, but there's nothing wrong with doing it as two. So I'm going to kind of kill two birds with one stone. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by 4. I'm going to multiply by 4 over 1 right here, and I'm going to multiply by 4 over here. But then the second thing I'm going to do is find the sum of these three numbers right here. Okay, so my inequality is going to look a little different here, especially my fraction. Let's see, 4 times 8 is 32, so 4 times 80 is 320. That's going to be less than or equal to, these are going to cancel. I'm going to add these, let me see, 70 and 80 is 150, and another 70 is 220. Then if I add the ones, I've got 7 and 7 is 14. This should be 234. 234 plus x. And that's going to be less than or equal to, let's see, that's going to end in 8, 348. All right, now I'm just going to subtract 234 from all three parts, all three sections, if you will. And when I do that, all right, the easiest part's in the middle here. I just get a plain old x. Here, 348 minus 234 should be 114. Okay. Over here, I've got to subtract, and let's see, I'm going to get a 6, and that's going to be an 11. And so that's going to be an 86. All right, so that means for Maddie to get the phone, she's going to have to score at least an 86 and as much as 114. Now, this 114% is probably not possible unless there's extra credit involved on the test. So, in other words, because she didn't do so well on her first three tests, it's probably impossible for her to get an average of 87 because she'd have to earn 114 points on the test. Hey, by the way, I was working with Aiden on a problem after school at the algebra party Wednesday. And we had a situation where there were like 4 tests and then like a 5th test, which counted double. Okay? Think about how you would handle that. It's going to affect your variable, but it's also going to affect, I'm just making this up, it's going to affect this, and it's also going to affect the number you divide by. So be careful with that one, all right? Okay, now, oops, wrong place, sorry. Let me see here. Okay, that should be it. I don't have any more problems right now. So what I need you to do is, if you're a yellow person, in the yellow group, you need to do the problems on the worksheet that say yellow, which are both sections. It might be a total of 6 problems. And then if you are a red person, you only have to do the section that says red, because based on what you did in class, you demonstrated to me that you already knew some of it, okay? You may work individually, you may work with a partner, and there is an answer key provided. So, anyway, good luck to you. Mr. Lawrence signing off. Have a good day, everybody.